Well, good evening, folks. It is Tuesday, October 26th. It's 7 p.m. and we're in the council chambers at the city of Platteville. And I am calling this regular meeting of the Common Council to order. Candace will start with roll call.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Eileen Nichols.
She's excused. She's got
Thank you.
family in town.
Kathy Kopp.
Here.
Jason Arts.
Here.
Lynn Parrott.
Here.
Isaac Shanley.
Here.
Okay, the first order of business on our agenda tonight is a public hearing. I would remind people that if you want to speak, we do have green sheets in the back. There will be opportunities here, and I do have at least one person who's registered to speak at this public hearing. So this is on ordinance 21-08, repealing and recreating section 2.01 aldermanic districts, election wards, county supervisor districts, and section 2.03 polling places. So we'll start with a presentation by Candace.
Oh, thank you. All right. So this is for redistricting after the census. This is the process by which electoral district boundaries are redrawn periodically to adjust for the shifts in population and to ensure proper representation for all potential voters in a given geographic area. Redistricting takes place every 10 years following the census and is accomplished by states adjusting the congressional and legislative district boundaries, counties adjusting county supervisory district boundaries, and municipalities adjusting ward boundaries based on the new census data. On October 5th, 2021, the Grant County Board approved a tentative supervisory district map using the census data. The tentative supervisory district map and statutory guidance, city staff developed a proposed city of Platteville map that updates the city wards as well as aldermanic district boundaries. The boundaries described have been drafted according to the proposed map and are updated within the attached ordinance. As you can, if you kind of flip through, you'll see the written out wards and districts as well as their proposed map and the current map. So due to complications from the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government's release of census population data in 2021 was significantly delayed, resulting in a compressed redistricting timeline for all counties and municipalities. A key deadline is publication of the notice of election, which must be published by the fourth Tuesday in November. For the city of Platteville, this equates to submission to the city's official newspaper, the Platteville Journal, by Monday, November 15th, 2021. Below is the city of Platteville's proposed timeline. As you can see, a couple of those dates have already passed, and we are currently at October 26th, holding the public hearing tonight. The timeline above incorporates guidance from the city attorney to integrate the proposed ward, district, and polling place changes into one ordinance for council review and adoption. As part of the redistricting process, the assignment of wards to city polling locations was reviewed. Myself met, as well as other staff, met with the chief election inspectors to study how the city responded to carrying out elections during a pandemic, locations of populations with like demographics, and how to better serve the voters of the city of Platteville. Staff is proposing to have wards 1, 2, 3, and 4 vote at the Broski Center, and wards 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 vote at Alsvik Hall. In an effort to have an ongoing communication with easy access to all community members, a dedicated page on the city's website has been created to display information throughout the redistricting process. Staff will continue to utilize a variety of other communication methods to update the public regarding changes to ward and district boundaries as well as polling places. If you find your name on the chart that I've included in this staff note, it does show that the first 4 alder members will have a change from the current map that we have to the proposed map. The last 3 in the list will have no changes, and that is based on the address of where you currently live and the new proposed map. Any questions at this time?
We understand then that the county drew the ward maps too? They did the whole thing?
Nope, the county gave us the supervisory districts, which is what our aldermanic districts are. And then Chris is our GIS specialist. He went through based on population and mapped out the wards.
Okay, and so the supervisory districts, are they listed on our map?
Yes.
And how do we know where the supervisory districts are?
Let's see. I thought that was actually here. It should have been included in your. We do have that posted on our website on the redistricting page, and we can certainly get that to you. However, the supervisory districts from the county follows exactly what our district, our aldermanic district lines are.
So District 1, which is wards 1 and 2, is one aldermanic district, one supervisory district?
Yeah, Ward 1 and 2 is Supervisory District 10, 3, 4 is Supervisory District 11, 5 and 6 is 12, and 7 and 8 is 13.
And so in terms of the ward lines, you drew the ward lines, but the ward lines have to follow the supervisory district lines. Is that correct?
The interior ward lines are divide up each aldermanic district, the aldermanic supervisory district lines, whereas the ward lines split the aldermanic district into equal population within that supervisory district.
Okay. Additional questions, Kathy?
Yes, that I'm confused. When I look at the proposed map with the breakdown for the 4 districts, the line has moved north for Ward 1 from current to the new. But when I look at this chart that has the population, you said that they were divided up to make them more even for population. The District 1 is 450 to 500 less than the other 3.
Yep, and that's because district, aldermanic district 1, which is part of supervisory district 10, supervisory district 10 extends out into the town of Platteville, whereas the other 3 aldermanic districts make up their own supervisory district completely within the boundaries of the city of
I
Platteville.
understand that, but what that means is, for example, Isaac is District 1. He doesn't have jurisdiction in the township.
That's correct.
So his number of individuals that he's representing is 450 to 500 less than the other districts.
That
Do you
is-
know, is that a change? I mean, I don't know what those previous numbers were for population for the four districts, the aldermanic districts.
Yeah, aldermanic districts that are currently enacted have a different population breakdown, not only because the data that we received from the 2010 census was different, but several of the districts extend out beyond the city of Platteville's jurisdiction.
Several of the current districts.
Yes,
And so this map was drawn so that there are supervisors that represent only 3 supervisors. 3 of the county supervisors only have residents within the city of Platteville.
yes, and that is correct. And that was what was handed to us by the county.
Additional questions?
I have it's really not a question, but it's a observation. Under the proposed map the realignment. The polling locations are going to change for those wards, and more individuals will be voting at the university. My concern, and I've already shared it with you, is the perception of going to the university, parking is an issue. And I would hate to think that people would say, well, it's too hard to vote if I have to go over and find a place to park. So the work, and you indicated you'd be working with the university to make sure that that was communicated with the population, because that could be, I have firsthand experience with that a lot, so. Okay,
No, and I think your concern is definitely valid, Kathy. So that's something where I think even with this, with any change, we're definitely as a city going to have to go, I'm going to say, above and beyond in communication for this next election cycle, because there's going to be differences where wards have changed. Every election we have, somebody, it's very realistic that people think they're in a certain ward and then they find out they're not. Well, this may be changing that because of the boundary lines. So it definitely is going to be a focus that we are going to have to do on a staff, with informational videos of, hey, here's where you can park if you have to go here. And so if that takes, Jody, Candace and I to get in a car and we'll videotape where you go, we'll figure it out.
okay,
I agree with you. I do think it's going to take a significant amount of communication repetitively for probably every single election for this next year. Maybe it's a bit of a blessing that there's going to be potentially four if February is needed. I guess just put this in perspective a little bit, like while I was doing all of this and going through the older files, the last census, so basically the last 20 years, the last census only changed by a increased population of 127 people. So our ward lines and our district lines didn't really change a whole lot. So at least for the last 20 years, if not potentially longer, our lines didn't change a whole lot. So we definitely recognize that this is changing things quite a bit. The population increase, and this is even with COVID, with students not being here and people kind of being all over the place during the time that the census data was gathered, we still had an increase of almost 1,500 people. That's quite a bit more than 127. So that's why you're seeing just this major shift because of the population and where we've had developments in the last 10 years. So that's another reason why the lines are kind of laying up as they are. But yes, we'll definitely be going above and beyond to communicate that.
okay, then just another point for clarification. We need to act on this tonight because of the timeline. Has the county approved their realignment?
Only tentatively, and that's what we based our wards.
So if we
lines on.
vote on this tonight, I mean, when we vote, what if the county has a change? Will that come back? Will that affect the decision that we're making tonight? And this may come back?
Potentially, I guess. The answer is yes. I mean, that can happen. I don't believe it's likely, but there is the potential that it can happen. My understanding, and Adam can jump in here as well, after speaking with City Attorney Cole, it sounds to me like if you guys were to approve the proposed map tonight and the lines that we've drawn out tonight, and then the county, we send it back to the county and they say, nope, we don't like that, we're changing it. It's my understanding that it would kind of be a step, would be moved a step ahead, and that would be a court process in my understanding.
Yes. So typically, because now you have essentially you're going to have two different maps. You're going to have our proposed map, which we've created our wards, and now you have the county's map, which is now shifted. And typically, if that occurs in the conversations with Bill, is there will be a lawsuit because it causes issues with districts and it's,
Well, I mean, the only way that would not be a lawsuit is if the motion was to approve based on these
correct.
or future, or as it was determined in the future. The county board isn't going to vote on this until November 9th.
Correct.
We have to publish our first notice by the 15th. So there's really no time between the 9th
Right.
and the 15th for us to
Make any changes, right?
make any, I mean, so I guess we have to believe that the aldermanic or the supervisory districts that they've drawn are the ones that are going to stand. And if they aren't, then yeah, that's a whole different process. So we can say this is approved based on the supervisory districts that we've been handed in this map.
Correct.
Okay, I had nobody registered to speak in favor, nor did I have anybody registered to speak against. I did have someone register to speak for information purposes, so I will call that public statements in general. And so I would ask Ben to come to the microphone, introduce himself, give his address, and speak.
So Ben Belkey, 225 North Washington Street. I am no longer student body president, but I'm director of legislative affairs in our student senate. I just want to talk about, I guess it is kind of in favor, but also informational as well, that having all students, on-campus students vote in one location is really important. It's one thing that we've talked about for many, many years in student senate, is how important it would be for all of us to vote in one location. Obviously off campus is not going to be necessarily, but we see a vast majority of people who live within the Roundtree Commons down below the football field. A lot of them unnecessarily get disenfranchised because they go try to vote at Olsvik because that's what we tell everybody to go do. And then they'll go and they'll be like, oh, you actually have to vote at Broski Center. And then they'll end up either just not trying or not being able to get there on time, all these different things. So especially from us as students trying to explain to people where to vote, especially for this is usually their first time voting ever, first time registering, first time doing all this stuff by themselves. So being able to have a streamlined communication for first year and second year students is so important for us to make sure that they continue voting. And statistically, if you vote once, you're going to vote multiple times throughout your life. So being able to solidify that, our first and second year students who are living on campus, it's so important to have that polling place centralized on campus. It makes communication so much easier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the only person who has registered. Well, the process is you do this before the meeting. And in that you've asked to speak in favor, we had already passed that in the agenda. Okay, but you may speak, but if you come again, Pilling? What's your first name? Kirsten. If you come again, then fill out the form in advance and hand it to Candace, please.
So yeah, I would just like to, reiterate what Ben said. My name is Kirsten Fry. I'm the student body president at University of Wisconsin Platteville. I live at 185 Center Street. Giving students the ease to access is so incredibly important, especially when we talk about barriers to voting, especially in small cities like this. Like Candace had said, it's 20 years that we know of that, any significant redistricting has been done. To just give a little bit of information about the parking spaces issue and things like that. I did work the polls for the presidential election last year. We do shut down the parking lot across the street, and there's plenty of space within that. We also had significant lulls throughout the day of nobody coming in and voting. So we definitely have the capacity for it to add more to that and the parking spaces in general. So those were just the additional comments I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
And you know that you would not vote at the Olsvik.
I would not. I know that. Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So we've had public statements in favor, against, and in general. Any other council discussion? Well, then do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Nichols. I'm sorry, Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
yes,
Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and now common council action. Anybody want to propose a motion?
Well, I move to, excuse me, I move to approve 21-08, repealing and recreating section 2-0.01, aldermanic districts, election wards, county supervisor districts, and section 2.03 polling places,
Based on the map provided.
based on the proposed map provided, correct?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 2108 based on the map provided by the county. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
yes,
Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we'll move on in our agenda to consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate if you want separate discussion or action on anything. So we have council minutes from October 5th, both the special meeting and then October 12th, the regular meeting, payment of bills, appointments to boards and committees or commissions. And tonight I have appointments to the Airport Commission. I will be reappointing Dennis Cooley and Danny Shao to 3-year terms ending November 1st, 2024. By the way, there are lots of opportunities yet to serve, so make sure and submit an application. Licenses tonight, we have Class A beer licenses to Sylvia Angelica Garcia Alberto from Galena for premises at 155 South Water Street. This is Garcia's Mexican grocery store. A temporary Class B license to serve fermented malt beverages and wine to Friends of the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museum for their Saturday, November 13th annual meeting and program. We have 1- and 2-year operator licenses as provided in your packet. A banner permit for Wisconsin Badger Camp for the annual Tub Club event, which is on November 22nd to December 5th. We have an application for exemption from the levy of any county library tax. We do that because we fund libraries, so we apply then for exemption. And then canceling the second meeting in December, which would be Tuesday, December 28th.
I move we approve the consent calendar,
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Lynn to approve the consent calendar. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot, Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now would be citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. I have several green sheets in front of me, but they all apply to some activity on the agenda. So I guess we will then move on to reports. So the reports that were in the packet, Museum Board, Eileen isn't here. I don't think anybody else. Public Transportation Committee, Lynn, anything to add?
No. Nothing.
Not to add? Okay. Community Safe Routes, Jason?
Nothing to add.
Parks, Recreation, Parks, Forestry and Recreation, Jason?
No, I think the big thing will be covered later in the agenda.
Okay, the Housing Authority Board, Ken?
no additions,
Library Board, Lynn? Water and Sewer?
no additions on my part,
No additions.
Okay, we're just moving on with trying to get our sewer problem fixed. But no news on that, right? Okay, Commission on Aging, Kathy?
Just an update, the commission met this last week and are relooking at their request to have a name change to put more definition of what the disabilities section is. So that'll be coming.
All right, then we'll move to the action item on our agenda. We have one action item. This is resolution 21-06, lot 2, Mineral Street parking lot.
I'm here.
That you,
Yeah. I'll do
Howard,
this.
my computer is stuck right now.
Okay. Yes, back in 2018, the Common Council designated assigned parking stalls. And in that resolution, any unassigned parking stalls would be designated as no parking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And one of them being lot 2, immediately behind the council, bounded by Mineral 3rd and 4th Streets. The owner of Platteville Cycling and Fitness has a fitness class that starts at 5:30 a.m. Her customers desire to have parking nearby for safety reasons, as well as convenience to be able to do their routine and begin their day. Our Main Street Executive Director also endorses this request. If the request is not granted, customers would be required to park in lots 7 and 8 at Furnace and 4th Streets, or on the street north of Furnace Street or south of Pine Street. The owner has said that many customers would opt to go elsewhere rather than park that far away, which would negatively impact the business. There are 25 unassigned stalls in lot 2. The reason why we have the no parking is to allow for maintenance, to include snow removal. Staff would need to adjust scheduling to attempt to clear the snow in the 2-hour instead of a 3-hour window. And police would need to work with their officers on the rules. If this business were to relocate later after this was approved, we would need to do another resolution to change it back if that was so desired. As pointed out by council members last time, this could be establishing a precedent by changing the parking rules. We feel that there are minor costs involved in changing the signage. And to support businesses, staff is recommending approval of resolution 21-26.
Okay, any council member have questions of Howard? Otherwise, I've had one person register to speak about lot 2 parking change, and so I'll ask Tammy Enns to come to the microphone.
I'm the director of the Main Street program, and we do support this.
Tammy,
because
say your name so that this goes on.
Tammy Enns. We support this because we want to support this business. And one thing I wanted to point out is this is not supporting just one business. This business brings in probably 40 or more people a day downtown. And these people that work out, then they shop and they visit many of the other businesses on Main Street. So by helping this business succeed, I think we are really helping the entire downtown because of the influx of people that this one business brings. So I think this would be a really positive thing to try to keep this business in our community.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Howard, in your write-up, you said the city would need to adjust the schedule to attempt to clear the snow. Does that mean you will adjust the schedule if this is approved?
Yes,
Okay.
if this is approved, then yes, we will be
Okay,
doing that.
and we talked about signage and not using stickers,
Correct.
right? I
That's
think
correct.
I remember Isaac saying, we don't want to be using stickers over we want to be having, signs that,
Understood.
all right. So, and Doug, do you see this as Chief, do you see this as an issue with your officers? Okay. Okay,
I have
any,
one question. You mentioned that if the business doesn't last, we'd have to make the change, revert the change back. Is that, how difficult is that?
Doing what we're doing right now. Bring it in front of the council for information and then for action.
That would only be if somebody requested to go back to the 6 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, folks, any more questions?
So, with in making a motion, do we need to include the reason that we would approve this is because of that business?
No,
Or how do we
you just want to make the,
monitor, how do we remember, 10 down the road, if that business moves, or
Right. I think
how do we
that-
reopen that parking lot? Or
Mhm.
or redo that, and somebody would just request, just like Howard said, I mean,
Mhm.
or in response to Lynn, right now, the hours would be no parking 3 to 5 instead of 3 to 6 AM. And in the event that there was a change and people weren't parking in that lot, perhaps the streets department would come back and say, hey, listen, that's put a extra burden. It would be best if we had that hour again to clear the lot. And, or, other folks might say the same, whatever, but I think it would have to be initiated. We wouldn't make a motion, I think, that said in the event that.
and because no one is allowed to retire, you can ask us that in 15 years and we'll know the answer. So.
There you go. Okay, so do I hear any other questions, or do I hear any motions?
I move to approve resolution 21-26 to designate unassigned parking stalls in lot 2. Mineral Street is no parking from 3 AM to 5 AM.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Isaac to approve this resolution 21-26. Candace will vote.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Cop,
yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot, Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our action items. So now we'll go on to our information and discussion items, the first of which is council rules.
It is. So good evening. So this is kind of our hopefully soon to be final journey in this. We've been doing this for a couple of months now. I think most of summer and into kind of the fall, but where we are is obviously the last review and update of most of these sections had occurred in November of 2016. So we have spent the majority of 2021 kind of going through the council rules and looking for your input in regards to changes that we have obviously seen since 2016, but also changes that are adapting to kind of the current climate that we're in. So making sure that we are obviously able to handle any type of virtual meetings that need to be done, looking into changes in regards to the documents that for Robert's Rules of Order, the version that we want to use, kind of votes, different things like that. So obviously what you have in front of you is kind of the finalized revised version of all of those efforts that we have done over the last council meetings. So you will see that anything attached to the staff note, you'll find a document which combines the efforts of past meetings into one cohesive document. The proposed eliminations to the document can be found stricken out in red. The proposed wording changes or additions have been added in blue. So again, as far as a budgetary or fiscal impact, we're expecting it to be very minimal, obviously just the charges for Zoom software. Recommendation wise, the city staff recommends the council members review the proposed changes and provide any feedback regarding the additions or changes they would like to see to the city manager. Once members feel the document is to a point where a majority consensus has been achieved, then the item can be considered for potential adoption at a subsequent meeting. The recommendation again would be for these changes to be adopted with an effective date of January 1st, 2022. So as you can see, we've kind of put together the document for you. And a lot of it is the information that we've talked about. It's now just kind of in one cohesive section for you to view. So I guess I'll answer any questions that you might have from here.
Questions? Kathy? Jason?
Nope.
Ken?
no questions.
Lynn?
No questions.
Isaac?
No questions.
I don't have questions. I do have, I do have concerns about the 6 o'clock time. I know we talked about 6:30. We're currently at 7.
Yes, so I put that in there as kind of a starting point. So
As a 6 o'clock
obviously,
time. Maybe
if you wanna-
others don't, I guess my concern is eliminating people who might run because they have family obligations that would take them past 6 o'clock.
Right.
As I mean, I don't know if most people work till 5. If I'm working till 5 and I have kids at home, and then I need to go home and make sure they get fed and watered and cleaned. Maybe 6 o'clock is a little early. I don't know.
Nope. that's
I'm
fine.
not of that age. 6 o'clock's fine with me, but that doesn't mean it. I don't want us to unintentionally eliminate potential
Right.
council members by choosing a time that, so I guess that's my, otherwise I think the stuff is what we pretty much discussed. So I don't know if people want to think about that or
Or I
ask
think-
others.
I think we get, no matter what time we would put, I think the statement you just made about 6 o'clock, I think no matter what time we put, you can put that statement with that as well. You know,
Could be.
some people could think, well, 7 o'clock, then the meetings don't get done until 10, that's too late. What do I do between 5 and 7? I'd just rather go from my office to the meeting, you know, so. It's one of those situations where we pick 5, they'll say you should have did 6, pick 6, should have did 7, you know, just keep
Yeah.
line, so.
And considering it's only twice a month, the adjustments I think could be made easier. So I think that's enough. I'm gonna agree with him on that.
Like I said, it doesn't affect me as much as it might affect other folks who.
No, I think it's a legitimate concern.
Okay. I think unless you hear otherwise this next week and a half, that we would move this to an action
Mhm.
item for the next meeting. Unless, you hear from somebody and it's like,
Nope.
I don't understand that. We really need to change that or whatever. I think we've been at this long enough that we probably can just move on with it. So,
Good.
okay. Then let us go on to amendments to chapter 24, fire protection and prevention. And so this would be not Ryan, because he's not here.
I'll pinch it for him. That's fine. So attached is a draft ordinance that includes potential amendments to chapter 24, the fire protection and prevention. This draft is based primarily on recommendations that came from the Platteville Fire Department Comprehensive Analysis Project, which was completed in February. The analysis included some recommended changes related to the governance and oversight and organizational structures of the departments. There are also changes to provide better and updated references to the state and national fire codes, and also to better reflect the current function and duties of the department. The Plan Commission reviewed the document and provided some recommendations, which have been incorporated into this version. And the Police and Fire Commission will review the document at their November 2nd meeting. So obviously with budget and financial impacts, we do not anticipate there will be any with these proposed changes. So staff is currently recommending the approval of the modifications to chapter 24, fire prevention and protection, as well as the Planning Commission has made that recommendation as well. So what you have in front of you is the attachment, obviously with chapter 24 with amendments. So obviously this is one of the first times you're seeing this. So our intention is to have you guys take a look at this. Obviously, if you have any questions, but then it would be potentially up for action then at next meeting. And obviously we'll have a recommendation then from the Police and Fire Commission as well, if they have any questions or kind of concerns and recommendations. So with that, we'll take any questions. I think Joe and I both were at those meetings, so we can answer
Right.
any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions. Ken?
I have one question on 24.10
Okay.
C. It says the city manager shall be the supervisor of the fire chief and the day-to-day operations of the fire department. Is this the same general definition as given for any other department in the city?
I would tend to say yes, because typically that is there is a director, and obviously that director does see the day-to-day operations, but then at the end of the day, I guess if you want to say, where does the buck stop? It stops at the city manager's desk. So
Okay, this is an addition to the chapter 24.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Adam, can we assume that this ordinance or chapter has been shared with the members of the fire department. Okay. And with our, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say our fire partners, the townships, did you share this with them?
No, but that is something that definitely we can, going forward, I'll make sure that we send this out again to the rest. I'll have the chief send this out tomorrow when I talk with them at the department meeting. We'll send it again to the entire fire department, because obviously with some of the changes that have been made. But then also we'll make sure that our towns get a copy of it as well, so they can see some of the proposals that are being recommended.
I have another question. It's 24.70, page 8 and page 9. Is there any special location for key boxes? You know, do they have to be at the entry to a building, or are they allowable inside the building as long as the door is unlocked? I was thinking about that.
I know they do have to be located near one of the main entrances where it's visible from the street.
And so a key box is required for a rental property. I know in the past there'd be one or two people didn't want them put in at all. So that's requirement now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, it would depend on the type of rental property. I mean, a single family rental would not require one, but apartment building that has a common require a key box.
It doesn't, it says all public buildings, all buildings that have an automatic fire alarm system, all multiple family residential structures containing 3 or more living units, all commercial and industrial buildings not otherwise accessible, and the size or construction of a building or physical barriers or terrain around a building may dictate more than one key box, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't say anything about rental property in general. One would assume that multiple family residential structures containing 3 or more living units would probably be rental units. Any other questions? Again, this will be reviewed by the Police and Fire Commission on
November 2nd.
November 2nd, which
yes.
is at least a week in advance of our meeting.
Correct.
And if there are any significant changes, then we would delay action.
Yes, we would bring those then to you
and
with the
bring
changes
those
that
back
we made.
around. Otherwise, again, unless there are significant inquiries to Adam for clarification, this would be moved to the action portion of our agenda for the next meeting. Okay, let us go on to then the Broski Center Care Committee.
So within the Inspiring Communities Incorporated transfer of the William J. and Mary Lou Broski Center at Legion Park to the city official document is a bullet point about the creation of a care committee. So the document attached to the staff note indicates that the city of Platteville shall recruit a volunteer care committee to provide advice to the city of Platteville's Park Recreation and Forestry Department. That advice might include suggestions with regards to management and pricing, facility cleanliness and conditions, and marketing and promotions. Additionally, this group may act as an ombudsman to investigate and assist with the resolution of complaints and concerns raised by users. The primary mission of the care committee is to assure that the Broski Center remains a highly sought after revenue generating operation for the city. So the current intention is to have this care committee be a subcommittee of the city of Platteville's Park Recreation and Forestry Committee. It's anticipated this committee will discuss many of the items expressed within the transfer document. Further, this committee will work to create a list of volunteers in performing cleanliness days at the Broski Center. These days will help to reduce the expenditure costs and continue to have the center be revenue generating. It is anticipated the committee will be open to anyone who wishes to join. but at minimum will consist of the following members. City staff liaison, Debbie Sigworth has agreed to be the staff liaison. And that's because she is the person that takes a lot of the reservations for the Broski Center. So we thought that made sense. We also thought it would make sense to have a common council representative to this, as well as a park, recreation, and forestry committee representative, reaching out to inspiring communities and have them have a member appointed to be on this. And then obviously allow anybody who would want to be an at-large member be on this as well. One of the things obviously we have talked about through this process, that because the Broski Center does serve not only residents but non-residents as well, is allowing this particular subcommittee to be open to anybody who is a resident and a non-resident if they want to join. We do have some committees that do have that requirement that you have to be. This is one we think would make sense that it could be open to anybody, anybody who would want to be involved in that. So again, from a budget and fiscal impact, there is very little budget or fiscal impact to this committee creation. So city staff is looking for council consensus on the member who would be interested in serving on this subcommittee. City staff will also be working to actively promote the request for volunteers to serve on this committee with communication specialist Richards. So essentially what we're looking for, not at this meeting, but at the next meeting, would be a motion to appoint a council member to obviously serve as the city council representative on the Broski Center Care Committee. I'll take any questions that you have about that.
Or do we have any volunteers?
Or do you have any volunteers? Make it easy.
You would volunteer? Okay, if any questions, otherwise we'll move next time to that appointment. Okay, going on to the agenda, the next thing on our agenda are the 1321 fuel contracts for 2022 and 2023. Howard.
Yes. Our current contract is with Allegiant Oil out of Lancaster through the end of this year. We bid the contract for refueling tanks at the street department garage and the wastewater plant. And we have diesel fuel, unleaded gasoline with ethanol for our city vehicles. We have a small truck mounted tank for gasoline with no ethanol for our small engines. And so this contract would be to refill the tank. Allegiant has performed the current contract very well. Per our bid tabulation, there were 2 bidders for this. We requested a cost plus markup as the basis for the bids. So as the wholesale price of gasoline and diesel vary up and down, on the day that we order the fuel, we would get it at that price plus the markup as listed here. Between the two, Allegiant Oil was the low bidder at 8 cents per gallon over cost. This year, UW Platteville also requested to be a part of our bid. We bid this as alternate bids. They're getting basically the same rate we would. And our recommendation is that Allegiant would bill the city would invoice UW Platteville plus a monthly administrative fee. I'm recommending $25 a month for processing the contract and invoices. It's the same arrangement that we have with Faraday for solid waste. Since I wrote this and put it in the packet, UW Platteville staff does agree that they want to go in with us on this contract. And I'm working with our city attorney to draft the agreement to make for that, to do that. I hope that our budget is flexible enough that if fuel prices continue to go up, we won't be busting our budget, but otherwise, I think that this works well in our favor. Allegiant Oil has done a very good job. And so I would recommend that we award to Allegiant Oil and with the alternate bids for UW Platteville.
Okay, questions of Howard? Otherwise, this is on for action, not this meeting, but at our next meeting. Any questions of Howard? Can we assume that the wholesale price that Allegiant Oil would say is cost would be the same wholesale price that Inside FS would say is cost?
Yes, I mean,
I,
when we do this, we ask them to identify, the day of the bid, what the wholesale price is for the different fuels, and then identify their markup on top of that,
Okay.
so that we can match that. But the idea is all fuels, fees, taxes, and then their markup.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if you have questions, get them to Howard before the next meeting. And as we approve this, Howard, you said you're working with our attorney on an agreement. Would
Between
that
us
be
and-
part of what we'll see at the next meeting or not?
I hope so.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the inclusive playground. So Luke?
Yep, I'll take this. Thank you. So in just a few moments, you'll have members of the Inclusive Playground Committee presenting you a PowerPoint to kind of introduce you to the concept of an inclusive playground. And then really what they're asking at this time is for the council to consider potential locations of how that playground could fit into our current park system. They've considered many options, as they'll go over in their presentation, but have come to the conclusion that Smith Park would be their preferred location for this type of inclusive playground. The same proposal that you're going to be listening to shortly has been presented to the Parks, Forest, and Recreation Committee on October 18th, and the committee voted unanimously to approve Smith Park as a location, or to recommend to you to approve Smith Park as a potential location. They didn't get into the specifics of actually breaking down where in Smith Park that would go, and felt that that would be a process that both staff, council, and the committee could consider at future meetings as the playground kind of starts to take shape. In terms of funding, they are looking for you to make this decision so that they can proceed with some of their fundraising possibilities and partner with a fundraising, Inspiring Community as their fundraising, I guess, collection agency. So a location would allow that to take place. The other thing we can kind of just give you a heads up on is we may be coming to you shortly to ask for permission to write a grant for this project. This would be a state-funded grant that covers essentially 100% of costs. And essentially, we would just be asking you, would you be willing to accept $1 to $2 million from the state for this project? So that will be coming shortly, and just going to kind of give you a heads up that may be coming at next meeting.
Okay. So Kim and Christina, are you both coming or just Christina? Okay. So introduce yourself and your address, and then.
Absolutely. I'm Christina Burr. I live at 6826 Woodland Road in Platteville. And I thank you for your time here tonight. I am here on behalf of the Platteville Inclusive Playground Project. I'm one of the leaders, or one of the co-leaders. Kim Zielinski is another co-leader on the project, as well as Morgan Arnold, who is out of town tonight. We're going to talk to you briefly about the inclusive playground. We tried, in respect of your time, to give you as much information ahead of time as we could. So I will move through quickly, but if at any point you have a question, feel free to stop me. Assuming I can get it to work from here. Sorry. Let's see. So if you look at your timeline overview that we sent you, we have been working on this project since May. We've taken a lot of steps to try to be as proactive in searching out the experts and leaders and those who have been through this process before, as well as people knowledgeable in this type of playground, so that we can move forward in as efficient a manner as possible. We do have a steering committee that's been formed, and thankfully we had a great response to our community meeting that we had in August, or September rather, and we had an outpouring of people interested in being on our steering committee. So we were able to select a great cross-section of that, as well as over 75, nearly 100 people who have already reached out to us to volunteer if and when we need them in the future. That's okay. So what is an inclusive playground? Just to talk about it in general, the main thing is that it's designed to create a safe space for people of all abilities to come together and enjoy time through play. So regardless of your age or your ability, whether you have sensory or mobility needs, it's a place that you can come together. It promotes, this is cutting in and out on you as I turn. It promotes play from every age between toddler and teenager, and typically is poured in place rubber for accessibility and fence for safety. The advantage is that it allows the whole community to come together. It brings together cross sections of people with different backgrounds. And the integrated play design allows peer-to-peer play between different members and different ages. It also provides that peace of mind for caregivers and allows everyone to join in the play, breaking down those barriers. The next several slides are just pictures of inclusive playground examples in Wisconsin, but these are not just found in Wisconsin. You'll find these across the country in large and small cities, even around the world, as people in their communities start to recognize and embrace the power and benefit of inclusiveness in their playgrounds. Auburndale is less than 1,000 people. Butts Park is in Toma, that's about 9,000 people. So these are not just urban cities that are making this step in their communities. It's towns our size as well. This is Oconomowoc, their overview. They're roughly around 16,000 in their resident size. This is a future one. They're actually, this is in Bay Beach. They're currently in their fundraising stage. And then this is your closest inclusive playground to check out. It's in Dubuque, and we've actually been in contact with the president of the Miracle League. They've been a great resource on their process and their advice on this type of project. We are looking to incorporate those features, including that poured in place rubber for accessibility, the fencing for safety. This is something that community members have reached out and said, you wouldn't believe what having a fence would be, what it would do for my family, that they drive to Madison, they drive to Dubuque, they drive to Milwaukee to find safe places that are accessible for their family to enjoy time together. And so bringing this type of a playground to Platteville would not only enhance living in our own community, but it would help be that next asset to our community to put us on the map in Southwest Wisconsin as a destination for families, as well as a leader in inclusiveness. We are looking at bringing new and exciting equipment beyond the basic equipment that we have in our parks currently, and either a rural or a nature theme to it. A lot of these parks you'll find have some type of theme that draws people in. This is one preliminary design that a company has provided us. We actually have reached out to 3 different companies so far, and they've provided preliminary design ideas for us. They're down here as well for you, but it has a lot of those great play features, and we'll just kind of buzz through those. But zip lines, climbing challenges, inclusive orbits. This is another example. This is Park Planet. We have so far reached out to 3 companies. One, Lee Recreation, has done a lot of projects in the Platteville area and Southwest Wisconsin. Mid-States Recreation was another company that Luke recommended we look into. And then Park Planet is actually the player-owned company that the Miracle League of Dubuque chose. And so that's why we reached out to them as a 3rd preliminary design. The ropes challenge course there. And you can see in the background too, kind of a nature themed, even has an M on it. The inclusive orbit, great advantage because it brings that peer-to-peer play together. Musical elements, sensory elements, climbing challenges. These are all just great options that we have that are different than the equipment that we have here in Platteville currently. We have a 3-tier plan for this project. We'll have a minimum build, a better build, and an ideal build. The pictures I showed you are our ideal build. That's roughly $1 million in playground equipment installed, with additional costs as far as electrical and engineering, parking, and bathrooms beyond that. We would have, if for some reason we didn't reach our goals, we would work to take any donations that have been given to enhance our current parks. Obviously, we hope with the the interest that we've gotten so far that we'll be able to build that whole playground for you. We would like to do a three equal bid design proposal. And our goal is fall 2022, but we know that there are building delays that can occur with COVID. So some of that will depend on the pandemic. But so far it's currently out about 12 weeks. So that would still, if fundraising was there, be an option. The pictures I showed you are roughly 175 by 125 with an additional healthy walking path around the outside is what we're planning. So roughly adding another 6 feet for that walking path around the outside. As Luke mentioned, our preferred location is Smith. In fact, our top 3 locations are Smith. We've looked at different locations specifically within the park, and then our 4th location is Legion. The picture overview here, location C is our first choice, that's centered across from the stone shelter, and then B and A are east and west. Along the west side, you'll see that pink line or pink rectangle. That would be the proposed accessible proposed accessible parking there off street. This is the current equipment in Smith Park. It would be relocated ideally to other parks in Platteville to enhance play there. There are a lot of great reasons to consider Smith Park. There's plenty of green space, a lot of opportunity here for freedom of design. It's in that hub of activity between Smith and Legion. If you're coming to Platteville for a ball game or a soccer game, to the pool, you're going to happen upon this park, and it's going to be a great asset in that flow of activity between those areas. It also has potential to trust funds that I know are designated towards Legion and Smith, having kind of looked into those. And then enhancing the other parks is also great. We've had people approach us to say having it so close to where summer school would be, as far as middle school, being able to walk up and utilize that for our students during the summer would be an asset. We've even had community members approach us and say having it be so close to Park Place is an advantage from an accessibility standpoint for any residents there who have loved ones that come and they want to enjoy time at the park with their family. The extra costs are really related to accessibility. Right now, the bathrooms at Smith Park are not accessible. That would require a remodel there, as well as having off-street parking that's accessible. If you're unloading a wheelchair, or even if you are a family with children on the autism spectrum, and you need to be able to have a safe space off the street to unload, we'd need to provide some type of parking for that. So those are the costs that we see associated there. We obviously will have to remove some trees though as well. While we want to minimize that impact, we'll work with the city and the Park Forestry and Recreation for their recommendations on which trees to try to keep in the play space and which trees would be best removed from the standpoint of their longevity or their potential for needing to be removed in the future. Any tree that we did remove, we'd like to plant another one in another location in our parks to help make up for that. This is just one example of the stone shelter bathroom remodel. Our plan would be to change it. Right now, there's 2 stalls on the women's side and a stall in the urinal on the men's side. We'd like to change it into 2 single-use family bathrooms that are accessible. That way, regardless of who you are, or if you're a dad taking your children to the park or mixed gender, you'd be able to utilize the bathroom. And the upper portion has an infant changing station, and then the lower portion actually has an example showing that we could also have an accessible adult size changing table there for those with special needs. The circle represents the 5-foot turning radius required for ADA. Legion Park, we'd be looking at the play space in front of the Broski Center. This was our original location that we were considering, but after community feedback from the community meeting, we actually changed it to Smith Park simply because the feedback was this park is already full. We chose it originally because it had accessible bathrooms and it had off-street parking. But based on the feedback from the community, we changed our recommendation to Smith. To reassure you, we did look at all the parks in Platteville, and your supplemental handout has the reasons that we chose not to recommend those other parks, basically due to extra costs or accessibility, terrain, or location. As Luke shared, we have presented to the Park and Rec, and they are in support of Smith Park as the location. And what we're asking of you is to ideally approve the project as a city project and to approve Smith Park as the location, or if for some reason you have another location you prefer, to share that with us so that we can move forward on this project. We can't start taking donations until we have a park location, and we're anxious to start our fundraising. In fact, I received my first pledges tonight at dinner. My 2 children offered $20 each from their bank account, and they plan to challenge their friends to match the donation. So I told them I couldn't accept it till you approved a location. So I appreciate your time. And we do have a Facebook page as well as an email address, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions of Christina, and I suspect Kim could also answer questions as she's one of the co-leaders. Questions? Ken?
Well, my first question is, you mentioned 3 companies. For these 3 companies, how long have they been in business as far as developing this type of playground equipment?
Do not know their exact established date, but this is something that they have been doing and installing for many years. I do not know. I can get back to you with that information if you'd like the exact number of years that they've been in business, but all 3 companies have a great reputation as being reliable and quality companies in inclusive playgrounds.
And my next question is, if and when you get down to selecting let's say 1 of 3 bids, would you then have people go to examples of projects that each company has built so you know what the quality is like?
Absolutely. We've already been requesting information from them as far as their other builds. For instance, we've had many team members on the steering committee already go down in person to look at the Miracle League of Dubuque, which was a Park Planet project. I've already been to Hazel Green, which is an example of Lee Recreation's most recent playground installation over there. We certainly would plan to investigate any company that we went with to make sure that it's the quality that we're looking for.
And I'm especially interested in how long the particular project has been built, what the longevity is, what the quality is after so many years of usage.
Certainly. Those are all great things to consider.
Land questions?
And a question. Smith Park is one of my favorite parks. My grandkids, my granddaughter thinks she owns it. I think she thinks she's Smith. How long will it take for this transition to happen? What happens? Like, what do you see happening? Is that utilize this? But this is going to happen in the fall. That time, like, a lot of kids come from the pool in the park and they go back at 6. Like, how long do you see this park being transformed? Or do you know like a timeline like to build it?
Absolutely. It varies a little bit between the companies as far as what they estimate. But so far the companies have estimated roughly 3 to 6 weeks for the transition.
There would be additional time involved with some of these other items that they're talking about, remodeling bathrooms and the accessible parking. It wouldn't, the timeline that she's talking about is just to put the play equipment.
Absolutely.
there.
Just to put the play equipment and the poured in place rubber installed.
Also, I might add that one of the advantages of Smith Park is that we do have 2 shelters there. So we have 2 restrooms currently in that facility. So you're not going to be without restrooms. We also have the restrooms at the pool, which would be accessible at that time. And then we do have two different play structures. So depending on the location here, it may be possible to keep one or different segments, segments of swings and a smaller play structure open while we're adding this new structure in, and then taking that smaller structure and moving that to a different park so that we're not, I don't expect Smith Park to be closed. I expect portions of Smith Park to be inaccessible during the build time.
Run it by my granddaughter and see if she approves it.
Isaac, any questions?
I guess one question I do have, so the new parking spots, and then I guess Morgan and I were talking yesterday, was she more or less called it like a family parking spot for the people that need a larger area, like you said, the autistic area, that would not be included in that pink area.
It actually is included. So
Oh, it is included.
that I've been working with Delta 3 and getting their insights. And thankfully, that location, I had originally been thinking that the southwest location below the path dividing east and west. But when I met with Dan Dresens, he pointed out that if we put it just north, it would still be equidistant to the playground and yet not affect any trees, which I thought was a fantastic observation. And roughly the estimate that I included is 7 van accessible parking spots and then additional 5 to 6 traditional parking spots that could be used for those families with special needs that felt they needed that off-street parking accessibility.
I looked through all the parks area, and I do agree with the committee. I think the Smith Park is the best. I actually live across from Legion Field, and it is busy. You get certain times where there's no parking now with the Broski Center baseball game going. Now we have the pickleball going, and I just think at that time, if any of those were on there, if somebody wanted to use that park, they wouldn't have an area to park. You kind of get in that area is more to be more of a recreational special use area. So I think Smith Park means to staying a park just with upgraded equipment. The stone shelter has been in need of updating for quite some time. Obviously, budget reasons we haven't. I think this is a good push to be able to get that stone shelter done and needed updated. Same thing, I understand there's gonna be some trees removed, but I think out of most of them, I think it'd be, no matter what park you went to, this would be about the same as any other ones.
And that's actually right. I did a rough count of the space that we'd be looking at. And even though, it might be deceiving because you think of Smith Park as having so many big trees, it was roughly within 2 or 3 trees, the same amount of trees in the space as Legion that we were looking at in that space. So it is similar.
I was talking with Morgan yesterday. It wasn't in your guys' proposal, but you brought it up today here, is I think it'd be a great asset to Park Place right across the street. You got the senior center as well as the assisted living. I'm not saying that they'll just be there when they have grandchildren or family there. I could actually see them using some of this themselves because it more would fit a person that has some need, wheelchair can get there themselves. So
Absolutely.
I think it's a great deal. Just Jason lives in that area right across the street. I think you can look from the west of Hill's house all the way down Sylvia bit, and you just have one row of activities pretty much from any age that you could think of to use that row there. So I think it's a great location, a great idea. So
Thank you.
Jason.
Yeah, I would agree with Isaac, and I think it's a great location because it kind of, it does kind of spread things out in terms of not having everything so condensed at Legion, and then the pool kind of sits in between both Smith Park and Legion. So I think that's going to be a great hub in terms of traffic flow and just giving Platteville that space. So
Kathy.
Yes. I think this is really an awesome project. My one caution is that I realize you're looking for of a location like by our next meeting. And my fairly new experience on the council, I look at the pickleball project And when it came to the council, had a great presentation, good conversation, and then it was approved. And there was a lot of comments from the community that they didn't feel that they got to be part of that decision. They didn't get to weigh in. So what I would definitely be in support of is somehow working with the general public. I'm assuming that the adjoining property owners would be notified or not. I mean, if I lived across the street, maybe I didn't hear about this or whatever, and all of a sudden it was approved. I'm just concerned that I would like to have communication to the general public pushed out there fast and furious before, so that we have more input from the citizens.
Yeah, so I think your thought is a very legitimate point and question. So, Jody and I have our weekly communication meeting tomorrow. So the thought that came into my head is very similar to what we did with kind of ATVs and UTVs, is we have a kind of generic City of Platteville email address that people can voice comments to, that both her and I have the ability to kind of monitor and look at. So I think there would be something we could do in either a notification, or, we have the PowerPoint presentation that's very easily now could be put onto our website. And when we do kind of a Facebook, push, as well as we can also do kind of a radio or a media push, to say that if anybody would like to weigh in on this, here's, where the information is at as far as our website. And then also here is where, you can voice your either in favor or if you have any concerns. And then essentially we can bring that back here in about 2 weeks to the council, and kind of give you kind of the running total of what we received.
Christina, you said you have a Facebook page. Do you know how many people are following it or doing anything?
We can get that information
Okay.
for you shortly. We have, we had a Facebook event page for the community meeting that we had, and feedback from that meeting was nobody said they didn't like the project. Everybody said, we love the project. We had many people say, we love the project. Please just don't put it at Legion. Please find somewhere else. And that's really what pushed us to look at all of the other parks to say, hey, maybe we need to think wider here. And what would be the best location? Yes, it might need some modification, but is there a better park? And as we dove into it, that's really where we discovered that Smith Park was. And I know we're pushing for a location from you, and we obviously want it to be something that the whole city feels good about. We're just anxious to be able to start fundraising for it. And we have been fortunate to partner with Inspiring Community and take their advice quite, we appreciate their advice on this type of process, and they really want us to have that location from you confirmed before we go to donors. And I think they have a valid point at, having that location before we start fundraising is important. Kim, what'd you have? 279 are currently following the page, 279.
And have you done any surveying of the neighborhood?
We have not done any surveying of the neighborhood. On communication, we were asked to wait until this meeting tonight to see if it were something that the council wanted before we proceeded with any type of outreach to property owners, in case tonight you all said, oh, Smith is not where we want it. We want you to ask people at this park instead. Feedback was that we should wait until you wanted us to ask the Smith Park property owners.
Okay, well, I haven't weighed in on this. I am very supportive of the Inclusive Playground Project, and I concur with having to me, it just makes sense to have this wonderful northern corridor that starts already clear by the soccer fields, and I mean, just extends way through Smith Park. And I think that spreading the people through that area is incredibly important. And so, yeah, I would hope, Luke, that you could do some kind of neighborhood, I don't know, meeting, survey, whatever. Probably the sooner the better. I'm sure Jason can give you the names of his neighbors since he lives right there.
So for the pickleball projects, we did send out letters to 2 parks, and Christina's right. In discussions, it was kind of like, if you're totally against it, we don't want to, go to one park and, get anyone worked up or excited either way. But I think you're going to be surprised by the number of comments you will get back in favor of it. Because I would suspect close to 200 of those people that signed up on Facebook are going to be filling out stuff to tell you they are supportive. But at least, we want to make sure everyone's voice is heard.
And I just have a quick question. Luke, you mentioned about a grant. Is there a timeline with that? Is that bearing down on you, on us to?
It's not bearing down on us this meeting. What I would say is we will know more in 2 days where we stand in terms of where we think our odds of getting this grant are. Our initial conversations with state seem to indicate we would be very favorable if we were submitted grants. And again, this is a kind of a major grant that is 100% covers costs of projects. And the state has indicated they are looking to give away this money as soon as possible. So as soon as we know that, we may be back in touch quickly and may even ask you to call a special meeting if we want to submit the grant, just because we think it's such a tremendous opportunity. And obviously grants like this don't come along often. And it's very rare that the state reaches out to you and says, hey, this project sounds perfect. So
I'm willing to build before fall.
Yeah.
This was one of the advantages of going to the League of Wisconsin's Municipality Conference, because when I was there, both myself and Dan Dressens with Delta 3 were approached by the Department of Administration, who has this grant funding, and said, hey, do you have any projects that are playground related? And we both looked at each other and said, why, we do. So essentially, yeah, we had a preliminary meeting this morning. As Luke indicated, we have another meeting now scheduled for Thursday with actually the Department of Administration to kind of talk about the parameters. But essentially, it's the possibility of 100% of the project would be funded through the Department of Administration grant. So we're going to figure out the specifics and kind of learn what we need to do. And then, as Luke kind of indicated, we may be either coming to you on the 9th or asking to have a very quick meeting to say, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. Are you guys in favor? And giving us the green light to go. So
I'm just going to add, this is their first time hearing this news.
Yes.
So, surprise.
Sounds great to me.
I
And
figured
I'm
this
sure
was a
they're
good surprise
terribly.
from your family.
Right.
Sure, they're terribly.
Darn.
This is
They
one of the
might, that
earlier
Christine
things
might
that
not
we
have to
touched on
match
a little
those
bit.
$20.
Right, exactly.
So I would only say this about projects in general. We need, as a city, to continue to dream and move forward, because the only way we get these things is by having ideas and pursuing ideas. And that is having the foresight, having the ability to dream, and then moving when you have to is so important, especially right now with money floating about. Yeah, if you don't put your hand out, you're not going to get anything.
And I think that's definitely, from the city manager standpoint here, kudos to you, both of you, for your I think it's been amazing to see the balls you guys have taken and basically run with to make this project, and the meetings, the passion and the dedication. To echo kind of Council President Doss, that's what makes this community amazing, is that we have people here that truly are dedicated to wanting to make Platteville a better place, and specifically with this, a more inclusive place. So I think kudos obviously to all of you and all the people that aren't at this meeting who have had some impact in kind of moving this thing forward. It's fun to see.
Thank you. And we love our community. That's why we're here. And I love what, I had somebody stop me at Badger Brothers that I'd never even met before and said, I hear you're talking about an inclusive playground. I just have to tell you, I think this is such an amazing project. And she actually had a child with special needs. And she said, the only thing in all my years I found that keeps a child with special needs from playing with their able-bodied peers is the appropriate space to allow it to happen. And, I just feel like that's so impactful. That's what we want to provide, is a space for everyone.
Yep.
And not to be greedy, Luke, but would this grant cover like the extra stuff too, or would it just be specifically for the playground build?
We're going to talk about that strategy, but it could
Okay.
include other things.
Okay.
So we're going to probably present them a list that might include something like the Second Street sidewalk, including the bathroom remodel, including the parking lots, things like that,
Okay.
playground relocation. But then we also have additional projects beyond the scope of this that we may give them as, hey, if you truly want to just get rid of this money, we're not against taking it, but we don't want to jeopardize, project A to get projects B and C.
Luke, would the old closed street that runs through the park there, that's in pretty poor condition, would that be considered as part of a revamp or redoing that? Means
That would be considered either way as a part of this project, because to be an inclusive playground, we have to provide opportunities for those that might be, have mobility issues to reach the playground itself. So I think either way, we would have to look at redoing that pathway.
Okay, I would mention that Jean Weber has registered here in favor, did not ask to speak. And I will also mention that Liz Peters and minors Bella and Rihanna Peters did registered in favor, but aren't here to speak. I assume that they probably should be in bed by now, these minors. Maybe.
Close.
Who says maybe? Okay, well, so thank you. We will put, if you can bring us some additional information and stuff, I would like to see if we can move this to action for the next meeting, if you guys can get information. And I guess the last thing I would say is that this council is very receptive to hearing from citizens. And so we thank you for pursuing this, for coming forward with it. We want, I guess, from my aspect, I would say, we want to be known as the approachable council that at least listens and tries.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate your time. Just to clarify, is what Adam's talking about, putting it out on the website, what you're looking for, or do you also want us to pursue property letters? I just want to make sure I get the information that you want.
I would like you to pursue. I don't care if you do letters or if you go door to door.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Moving from playgrounds to dogs.
All right, this one is me as well. So I think many of you probably know, but I don't think many of the public know, our current ordinance regarding dogs in parks is that we do not allow dogs in parks with the exception of Mountain View Park and the dog park. In practice, I would say that is not what people currently are following. And in part because of that, I think there might be an opportunity to review that regulation. We also had a request come before the Parks, Forestry and Recreation Committee that kind of sparked this. The request was actually to have more restrictions placed on dogs, specifically in Harrison Park. So during that discussion, the Parks, Forestry and Recreation Committee voted unanimously to change the ordinance to recommend to you to change the ordinance to allow dogs in the park with the following exceptions. All dogs within parks must be on a leash no more than 6 feet long and always held by a person. All dog handlers are required to bring dog bags or scoops and pick up dog wastes when in parks. No dog may damage park property or interfere with other park users. No dogs are permitted within the Platteville Family Aquatic Center or Harrison Park. And I'm just going to point out the reason we wanted to select a park that would be dog free in case there were individuals that did have a fear of dogs, that they would have an opportunity to play and to be in that park without having any dogs within that park. No dog shall be within 20 feet of a playground. So again, trying to keep dogs away from those specific play locations where kids would be present. No dogs are permitted within sports fields or facilities, including baseball, softball diamonds, soccer fields, tennis courts, pickleball courts, or basketball courts. And no dogs are permitted within special events, except where the sponsor has specifically requested to allow dogs within the park. So when we have events such as Dairy Days or Strawberry Fest, they can request, or basically they can have those areas be dog-free unless they would like to have dogs in those locations. So that is the recommendation. This isn't in ordinance form, and if the council is supportive of this idea, we would work with our city attorney to incorporate it into language and bring it back to you in a proper ordinance form.
Okay, questions of Luke about dogs in parks?
Look,
Jason,
what is the current ordinance say about Mountain View Park as far as, I mean, of the dogs are allowed there on a leash? Are they required to, like the dog park, to have their shots, everything has, every animal has to be on a leash?
I'd have to double check the specifics of the ordinance. I don't believe it gets that specific. I believe there might be a separate ordinance regarding how dogs are handled in terms of shots, and that if they're in the city, they have to have that, or if they're housed in the city, they have to have that. But then separate from that is the ordinance that has to do, which is at 6.025, which has to do, the exact language is kind of in your packet, which is basically it is unlawful to harbor or keep any animal which is present, whether on or off a leash in any public park of the city, with the exception of Mountain View Park or the dog park, where animals on a leash shall be determined running at large. I would add that posted at the campground, there are some additional regulations that dogs cannot be left unattended if they're there while, with a camper. So that there are some additional rules that we have that are not part of the ordinance that are specific to the campground location.
And you're talking about only dogs, because your current animal regulations are about any animal.
That's correct. The current city ordinances have to do with any animal. We would propose that these exceptions be made for dogs unless the council wants to open it up for other things. I would say we do have occasional requests to bring in like petting zoos or things like that. And if you would like to determine a process for that, I would be open to writing that type of language into the ordinance, not necessarily approving it, but at least setting up a framework for a process for allowing something like that could be included in this. We were just trying to be very specific to what this particular request was.
Guess I have one other concern, and without talking to them, I would venture a very strong guess that the veterans may have an issue with City Park and not wanting dogs within so many feet of that memorial, either the one in the center or the statues, or the fire department or Tom Ryder. So but they can certainly weigh in on that themselves.
Jason, any questions, comments?
I'd be interested in just seeing a draft of potential, like you said, the petting zoo type question, so.
And you're on the Parks, Recreation and Forestry Committee, so you've seen these recommendations.
Yep. Mhm.
And we can assume that you concur with those.
Yes, so I think it was unanimous in terms of the
Okay.
committee approval.
Ken,
No questions.
okay? Lynn,
No questions.
Isaac,
I don't have any questions, but I would be against changing this to opening up to dogs in the parks. I think a lot of families and people go to parks to relax. Not saying you can't when dogs are around, but you have someone that go there for a picnic or their kids are there. You get some dogs, even though they're supposed to be on a leash, or they'll be running around. You have some children. We're just talking about the Smith Park, the inclusive. I think you have some people that, some kids are afraid of dogs, whether they be on a leash or not. they get hesitant. So I myself, I think we have a dog park for a reason, is what it was put up for. I think the parks are, for big playgrounds, events, stuff like that. So I myself would be against opening up the additional parks for dog use or I guess better to cats, as Barb said, all animals. So, but like I said, I'd be against opening that up. So.
Okay, one of the things I have, it says all dog handlers are required to bring bags or scoops and pick up waste when in the park. Isn't it a law in our city that you have to pick up waste no matter where you are?
It is, yeah. I think when we're looking at this, we're just looking to keep it. When I was presenting this to the Parks, Forest and Recreation Committee, I wanted to keep this concise as possible. So if that language is repetitive, we may be able to remove it from this section. Although I do think there is a slight difference between just picking up your waste and also bringing that with you, regardless of whether your dog does choose to relieve themselves, that you have it regardless of whether they actually do it. And I think that I prefer this language than what's in our current language, but I'm if it's duplicated, then I think we could look at removing aspects of it.
Any other questions or? I will say that I have frequented a park this summer that has a very large sign that says no domestic animals allowed. And most generally, right under that sign, there's a dog sitting. Now, maybe those aren't domestic, but I do know that I have seen, and I believe you and I have talked about this, Kathy, dogs in our parks. And I assume this is a very difficult thing to police, a very difficult thing. So any other questions or considerations? You're recommending all parks except Harrison Park.
In the aquatic center, but
Pardon?
again, in the aquatic center. But I think that's probably fairly obvious to
Right.
most, but to be technical. But I think there's opportunity there. If there are concerns that certain parks additional parks should remain dog free, there might be a compromise between what the Parks, Forest and Recreation Committee is recommending and perhaps what Isaac is saying. If there's some compromise there, that might be agreeable to everyone. I'm not sure.
All right, well, folks, think about it. I believe that Jay, I also would be interested in hearing whatever kind of process might be put in place to have special event like petting zoos or whatever. And maybe, I don't know how you do that, so.
I was just thinking too, in terms of the enforcement, that's definitely an issue. And I see that as, regardless of kind of what direction we go with this, I think somehow figuring out how to make the enforcement work would be something to discuss as well.
And I guess I would also like to know if we have a requirement, I think we do, but I don't know that, about licensing dogs or licensing animals in general. So maybe we need to see all of that whole thing.
Copy. I also did survey all our benchmark cities just to see where they were at in terms of allowing dogs in their parks or not. And I can include that for you as well. Most allow them, but there are some that also do not.
All right, so we'll have that additional information. If anybody can think any other information that they would like relative to this, make sure to get it, your question or whatever, to Luke or to Adam. All right, next on the agenda is update on the budget. Any updates?
I don't have too much. We're still waiting on our liability insurance numbers to come in. So we have a meeting planned for Wednesday on that. We're also still waiting on the municipal service aid payment to find out. So those are two areas that potentially could decrease the amount of the levy that was presented. We did finally get our statement of assessment, and as we thought, it came in lower than it came in lower than what we were thinking. Luckily, we were pretty dang close, so we can make an adjustment where essentially what we presented to you as far as what the increase would be is what right now you are seeing. So we're good with our financial numbers there. So again, right now we're waiting on a couple of finalized things that definitely could be benefits to the budget. But essentially, as of what was presented to you last week, we do not have any anticipated changes at this time.
Okay. Does anybody, after having this in your possession for a couple of, have any additional questions? Okay, well,
Maybe, I don't know if this is an appropriate time to bring this up. It really doesn't have anything to do with the budget that we're looking at. But, and I did raise this in a conversation with Adam. I feel that we need to be looking forward for maintenance issues with these larger park projects. We have the pickleball court, we have the Broski Center. Now, hopefully, we're going to have this inclusive playground. Within our city budget, there's no projection for, I mean, very generous community donates the money, they make this happen, then they turn it over to the city. Are we being responsive enough to put a plan together for long-term maintenance? I mean, we're accepting the obligation, but how are we moving forward with that? So I would like us to explore what kind of options we have so that we're not, my concern is when I look at the CIP budget, we're really limited. And say 10, 15 years down the road, we have a major expense with one of these new facilities that could impact maybe us doing a street project or something. And I'd like us just to be a little more forward thinking about how to do that.
I think that Councilmember Nichols has asked in the past for a, lack of a better word, I'm going to use schedule, a schedule of city facilities and anticipated maintenance. So Kathy, it's not only the Broski Center, but maybe it's the building where we keep our snowplows. When does that need to be painted? When does that need, you know, we really don't have a schedule. I don't know if it would be called a schedule or what it would be called, but where we would have city facilities. When I was on the school board, we developed that for the school district facilities. It's like, okay, we have the bus garage, we have this, we have that, we have, you know, this parking lot, we have that roof, we have, you know, so what is the expected life? And when are you going to have to replace that roof? Or when are you going to have to replace that parking lot? Or when are you going to have to replace those windows or that HVAC system or whatever it is, so that you kind of have that in your mind?
Yep.
So I think we need it for more than these projects. We need it for the overall city facilities.
Exactly. And that's pretty much what, I mean, you saw the creation of that this year was the more comprehensive CIP. Now what's going to happen is, now that we have that as department heads and obviously you as the council, we have this document now that every year we can refine. So that's where we're going to be able to get more to exactly what you're indicating, Kathy, is, okay, we know in the next 5 years, as it was presented in the CIP, we're talking about a fire station, we're talking about a public works building potentially in 2026. We can then start looking at that long range forecasting and going, okay, where do we put Broski Center projects? Where do we put the pickleball court, you know, resurfacing, and start refining that? So then every year we have that document and we're kind of, you know, tweaking and changing as, you know, things come where these projects come and go, oh boy, we weren't really thinking about that. We need to start putting that in there. So that really is the goal now that you hopefully are starting to see with that comprehensive CIP. is it allows us to get more into kind of the weeds, for lack of a better word, of those items to make sure that we're staying on top of that. So you see that as a council and we as a staff kind of see that as well.
And, I think we can go back to like 1993 to 1995 when the pool was built. I mean, the issue is there's probably things at the pool that need to be
Yeah.
handled, whether they're slides
Right.
or whatever. I mean, every city facility is, and as Isaac pointed out tonight, we've known the stone shelter in Smith Park needed what for a win.
Yeah.
I mean, but unless you put it out and you bring it to the front of the mind, it seems to be able to be.
Yeah, and
drift away.
there's long-term options we'll have to consider, and that's with the CIP as well, as you and I kind of talked about, Kathy, that you have kind of three scenarios you can do. You can either wait, as unfortunately the city has had to do because of budget restrictions, and when those projects come, they kind of get pitted up against everything else, and it is kind of a pick and choose. Okay, we can do some of this, we can do some of that, or you have to look into the CIP, kind of similar to what we do with the airport, where we have a fee amount that we put every year, and every year in the CIP we designate to that. So that's something potentially we could look at doing as a city, is start going, okay, we're going to create whether it's $10,000, we're going to call it a park replacement fund, and it just starts building up. And when we know these projects are coming, it's, the explanation you have to give to the community is we're trying to build this fund so that we don't have competing projects. It's a long road, but we'll get there.
I could just
It's a
add
long road.
two quick things. So for pickleball, for example, in the CIP, you will see that has been added, into our future projections when we're going to look at resurfacing pickleball. And for the Broski Center, we've set it up as an enterprise account. So the goal with that account is that we are setting money aside each year. Now, the first year we operated during COVID and we actually carried a negative. This year, having a full season and less COVID restrictions, we are looking at the possibility of possibly, having $8,000 to $10,000 extra, which will carry over into a trust account that can then be used for future maintenance, those larger projects, the water heaters, roofing, things like that. So the goal is to get there. I think it's a balance. The Broski Center, it's always going to be a balance, I think, between how high do you price it and maximizing the amount of rentals to get in there versus, overpricing the market versus just, I don't know exactly where that balance is, but we're gonna have to keep adjusting that and looking at that. So we do have a plan going forward, how we can maintain that in perpetuity.
One thing I'd say about the Broski Center, and I said it's a great structure and great use. My family's used it still. I know, like this year, at least you say there will be a surplus put in there, but you also still get a consideration, even though the city's not paying for it. Just from the Broski Center, there are lights, water usage. The person that goes up there on Saturday and Sunday to clean it, even though it's supposed to be clean, the garbage takeout. So I would recommend and now Kathy, that you're going to be the appointed person at the next meeting on that committee, is to take there's where I was asking at the last council meeting, we got to kind of get a cost of estimate what those costs are every month. And then when you look at your fees for the Broski Center, I'm just gonna say a generic number, $100 every time you rent it. You need to take those costs out of there and then figure out how to get the replacement on top of that. Like I said, the city's paying for it in a general fund, like with the electricity, the water and sewer, but you got to really think of that building as being a cost building as well. Like I said, the water, sewer in there, and then your replacement on top of that. And that's how the fees for that should be judged. Luke, I understand what you're saying about, we don't want to get it too high so we don't, people go otherwhere, but on their hand, we shouldn't be giving that building away for usage. And I think as of right now, I think that fee we're giving that building away to use that building. It's too low in my opinion. I'm sorry. So.
Okay, folks. Well, that's a little on budget and budget planning. And so that's the last item on our information and discussion agenda. So I would take a motion to go to closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 1981, parent 1, parent C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And this will be the city manager contract review.
So moved.
Second to the motion.
Okay, a motion by Jason, second by Ken. We'll vote. Candace?
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.